Some of my favorite moments of Splatoon as a whole have been from when the game is challenging or difficult. Iteration 3, for example, was the secret boss from the Octo expansion and is genuinely a hard fight, especially to someone new to the series. And when I went to do the fight for the first time, I had about 5 to 10 hours of experience with the franchise, and the fight whooped my ass. I spent hours playing over and over again just trying to win, and honestly, I really enjoyed having the skills I learned up to that point tested, and when I finally won, it felt so satisfying. After this, I was hooked to Splatoon. Most days I would come home from school to play, whether it be some ranked or Grisco, or even just messing around in private battles. And every so often, I would go out back to Iteration 3 just to see how much better I'd gotten. The fight had left that much of a mark on me. Around 2 years of playing relatively consistently later, Splatoon 3 came out. I went through the campaign just hoping there would be something difficult, but there really wasn't any challenge in it. Even after Alterna, which was supposed to be the big, scary level, was pretty easy for me, as I only died a couple times. I left feeling disappointed knowing that I likely would not be challenged by a Splatoon game ever again. A couple years went by, until one day, after I got up some X rank, I was about to put my Switch in sleep mode until I found this feature, the ability to remap controls. And this gave me an idea. What if I were to take on Splatoon 3's hardest level, but shake things up and have to relearn how to play the game? Would it really matter if I had all this experience on Splatoon if I didn't know what the controls were? This is what I wanted to find out. And so I made a computer program where if I clicked space, it would give me a random button for each of my controls, and then I would be able to remap my buttons in the menu I found. With my program now done, I was able to start playing. The plan was set. I would be trying to beat After Alterna, but with randomized controls between every section. However, before I actually went into the level, I decided to play a couple practice levels and see what I would be up against. I hadn't even actually made it to a level yet, and I could already feel how abnormal this was. Like, to open my menu, I had to press ZR, and then to get to the level select screen, I had to push down on the right joystick, and then click Y instead of A, which just feels so wrong. After spending an unreasonable amount of time figuring that out, I finally got to the levels I wanted to try. The Zipcaster ones, which are essentially just making your way to the goal while in Zipcaster form the whole time. This was perfect for practicing, as it forces me to remember all the important buttons, like jumping, shooting, a bit of swimming, and bomb throwing, or I guess throwing your arm out in this case. These levels gave me a great taste as to how this challenge was going to go, and other than a few very unfortunate deaths and accidentally opening my menu like 100 times, things went pretty smoothly. I wasn't forgetting my new binds very often, and was even going kinda fast. And after a little more messing around, I finally felt ready to take on After Alterna. I did one more randomization, then went in. Now, the first section of After Alterna is honestly a pretty brutal introduction to the level, with the point being to test your movement capabilities. The first half is full of areas that are there to see if you can platform while under pressure from both the Octarians and the level itself. And in a challenge like this, it's pretty easy to slip up and make a mistake resulting in your death. And the second half is probably even scarier, with it being more focused on precision, speed, as well as a bit of patience. Like with this moving block section at the end, which really punishes indecisiveness and going slow. But I mean, come on, there's no way this will be too hard. I've played through this level quite a bit and breezed through the practice levels, so I'm sure this won't be too difficult. Anyways, this won't be too bad, right? Okay, so I forgot to mention that I had rolled an absolutely awful control scheme. Just to show how bad it is, here's a little demo. Alright, so the two most useful buttons for this section, swimming and jumping, are map to minus and screenshot respectively. This means that a lot of the platforming is going to end up making my hands look like this. But it gets even worse. My shooting button is mapped to pushing in the right joystick. So if we put it all together, here's how it looks. Oh, and it doesn't help that every time I forget my controls and click B, I take a screenshot. And if you want to know everything else that I rolled, here's a little diagram that you can pause to look at. Yeah, at this point, I'm realizing how awful this could be. Blanking on my controls at an important moment could lead to a quick death and losing a bunch of progress. But after a couple more stupid deaths, I did start making a bit of traction. I got past the first set of jumps, killed some Octarians, jumped onto these spinning platforms, and then slipped off of this one. This was pretty bad. I was dying in these comedic ways that I'd never done before, but I just kept going and got further into the level. My very next attempt, I made it back to this platform and actually landed the jump this time, then had a very close call with these Octogunners and almost died again to these Octo Troopers because I just forgot how to activate my splashdown. And after those guys had been dealt with, I had made it to the wall, which is a very easy section but really made me look quite dumb because I kept almost making it up and then would either bonk my head or fall quite far down. Then I made my way even further up, past these enemies, and almost died again for the third time now. But after using the stash track, I had successfully reached the halfway point of the section. The excitement I had when reaching this part was pretty short-lived though. After fumbling around trying to find and throw a burst bomb, which I could not do for the life of me, tragedy struck. I hopped onto the block and about halfway down its path, let go and fell into the void. This meant that I was all the way back at the start. This challenge is making it clear to me why buttons like minus aren't used as important controls very often, because, you know, it's quite uncomfortable to hold them down for a while. Anyways, after screenshotting enough to fill out a scrapbook, I did make it back and made sure to hold on to this time to both the walls and the ink lines further ahead. At this point, I was actually feeling pretty good. I had gotten back to this part pretty quickly and was at the moving block section. With this confidence that I felt, I thought it would be reasonable to just try and brute force my way through this part, and so I just jumped down. And as soon as I landed, I realized that this was a mistake, and that I should have played this a bit safer. I started to feel rushed as the blocks headed toward the water, so I made a run for it and made the same mistake as earlier. I let go of my swim button and fell into the water. Yeah, so after dying like that again for the second time, I realized that I needed a plan so I could get through this part with as little issue as possible. I did a bit of thinking and decided that I should paint the blocks before jumping down. This would be useful as I wouldn't have to worry about painting nearly as much while I was platforming, and instead just be able to focus on jumping from one block to the next. And it would also come with the benefit of being on the blocks for less time, which would lead to a lower chance of accidentally dying from another dumb accident. On my next attempt, I was back and tried out the new plan that I had made. I spent a decent bit of time painting every single block and their walls, trying to streamline the process as much as possible. I primed my burst bomb in case I needed to paint something quickly and dropped down. This was so much easier than painting while going. I jumped across the bricks with ease and made my way down as far as I could while throwing burst bombs at the wall that contained the launch pad. Once the blocks were positioned right and I was feeling ready, I made my way over to the wall and climbed up, then got to the launch pad and left, finally ending this section. The second section is luckily quite a bit easier than the first one for a challenge like this, as the main thing that's being tested is your aim at a bit of ink preservation skills. This is because the whole idea of this part is that you're riding on these ink rails and popping every balloon you come across, with the difficulty coming from the fact that if you miss even one, the next rail doesn't spawn and you fall to your death. And this honestly is not too bad if you have enough experience with the game and are just pretty good at hitting your shots. Now, the random controls still do have a bit of an effect here. I need to jump during some parts to get from line to line, and going into swim form can be useful to get ink back. But I mean, that's kind of it. Knowing how much simpler this section was made me quite optimistic, and I felt even better after seeing the controls I rolled. My shooting button was mapped to screenshot, up on the D-pad was swimming, and A was to jump. So instead of the weird messy hand position I had in the last section, I just had a half claw grip looking thingy. And here's the rest of the controls if you're curious. And with all these factors combined, I really just kind of breezed my way through this section. There were still some close calls, like here when I had to play backwards because I missed a balloon, and of course it still felt like I was breaking my wrists going up this part. But within my first couple attempts, I reached the launch pad and was just done with the section. But you see, there was one problem that I didn't notice until I had already left. I accidentally forgot to hide the window that showed my randomization of the controls, which meant that all my footage was covered with this big box, and so you couldn't actually see what was happening. Now this really sucked because I wanted a recording showing that I had beaten this section with these controls, but I had already gone through the launch pad, so I couldn't just jump off and be back at the start. In the end, I decided to restart the whole level. But I wasn't just going to be a coward and turn off my controls on the way back. No, I wanted a challenge, and so I was going to stick with them on. So there you have it. I was finally done with the first half of this level and actually had a recording for it. Feeling satisfied, I headed into the launchpad and left for the third section, for real this time. The third section is like platforming 2 Electric Boogaloo that features gimmick after gimmick. Like how the floor has just been pretty much entirely replaced with soaker blocks for the first half of the level, and they're paired with a bunch of Octarians that will shoot at the blocks, which get rid of the ground below you. And the second half is essentially just an auto-scroller, where you hitch a ride on some Octo missiles that were trying to kill you before. In order to reach the end, you have to keep them alive as they carry you over the water, or else you fall a long way down to your death. The random controls have a similar effect here as they did in the first section where, again, forgetting what to press can lead to a quick death, like not remembering how to jump and falling into the water, and other things along those lines. The controls I rolled were pretty interesting as well. The important buttons are all relatively easy to use, like shooting being left D-pad, jumping being minus, and plus being swimming. But there are some evil parts about it that could mess me up, like how up D-pad pauses my game, and down D-pad resets my camera, which are both very easy buttons to accidentally press while shooting that can disorient me. I finished changing my controls, then set out, and this was by far the weakest start I've had yet. After going through so many different control schemes, my mind felt like it was melting, and I was struggling to get the controls down here way more than on other sections. To compensate, I went very slow for the first little bit while figuring everything out, and so it took me forever to even reach the first Octarian, let alone remembering how to throw small fry and complete the first jump a bit later. Little by little though, I progressed, and I took my time with everything I did to ensure that I wouldn't make a mistake and die. And lucky for me, I had my little buddy, who I could just throw onto a soaker block which would give me as much time to progress as I needed. Eventually, after doing a squid surge up this wall, I made it to this bridge that was full of Octarians. And now real quick, I just want to pause and see if you can guess what happens next. Will I A. Kill every enemy successfully and make my way across the bridge without any issues? B. Become friends with the Octarians and cross without a fight? C. Splash down into the void? Or D. Forget my controls and walk around like a dumbass? Well, if you guessed D, you'd be correct. Yeah, I'd gotten really impatient at this point and just kinda wanted to get a move on, so I ran in unprepared, which was incredibly stupid. I rushed into the army waiting for me, and in a panic forgot all my controls, yet kept running forward, spawning in everyone all at once. But somehow I pulled this insane clutch, where I just walked off the bridge and caught the ledge, which let me heal and de-aggro a bunch of the Octarians. And then I had to do it again because I still could not remember how to shoot and got blown up by some octopods. Luckily, when I came up next, most of the enemies at this point had either just left or blown up, so I was able to move on. And right ahead of me was a checkpoint, which I was quite happy to see because I did not want to have to do all that again if I died. I took a quick breather while remembering how to shoot my weapon, then started going again. But I made sure to go slow, as I did not want a repeat of the bridge incident. Although, I ended up taking my advice a bit too literally, and died a couple times because of it. Like right here, when I tried to make this jump with no speed, and did not reach the platform. and here when I called Small Fry back a bit too slow and got my Octo Missile killed. But eventually, I found the right balance of speed and had a nice smooth ride. After waiting what felt like forever, I finally reached my destination. I left the driver a 4.5-star review and a nice tip, then went on to the launch pad. The fourth and final section is a massive battle between the fuzzy Octolings with 3 phases, which progressively get harder as they go on. The funny thing about this part is how the other gimmicks throughout the level appeared relatively frequently throughout the campaign, but the fuzzy Octolings only showed up in like 2 other levels despite being shown off in the promotions, but I digress. Having randomized controls in an encounter like this comes with another set of risks compared to the rest of the sections. Like, if I forgot my controls before making a jump on an earlier part of the level, I could just wait a bit and click each button to see which one I need. However, I don't have as much of a luxury here, because I'm not really able to just wait and try to remember if I forget how to shoot or something, as I'm likely to just get run down by a horde of Octolings and die. Luckily, the controls I got ended up being pretty easy to remember, as the most important ones I had were all mapped to the D-pad, with jump being on the left, bomb throwing being on the bottom, and shooting being on the right side. Another thing that I was happy to see is how the screenshot button is bound to my right joystick, so unless I really panic, I shouldn't take any more screenshots. And here's the rest of the controls. Starting out the battle, the first wave was actually pretty easy to deal with. The patterns they spawned in allowed me to camp their jumps with a splat bomb, and the few that did survive the landing were not very aggressive and would just come after me one at a time, where they would then meet their end by the hands of my Small Fry. And even though I had rolled some pretty simple controls, there were already a couple times where it felt like I was running on the same code that the Octolings were using, as I would occasionally forget a bind and kind of just start walking around like an AI or spin in circles trying to figure out what to press. Once I reached the second wave, I could start to feel the increase in difficulty. The Octolings were getting more aggressive and began to use more of their kit. Wait, hold on a second. Is that an autobomb? No! Are you serious? Come on! It seems like these guys are trying to use my painful memories of Inner Agent 3 against me, and if they want to play like that, then I'll just have to hit them back harder. I returned to the arena with a vendetta and went on a killing spree. None of the Octolings from the first wave could even stand a chance against the wrath of Small Fry and I. We were unstoppable. The second wave came down, and this time no matter how many auto-bombs they threw, I would not falter. And despite the increased aggression and larger kit usage, they could not end our rampage. Small Fry and I went on killing every last one of them. And finally, we reached the last wave. This one was by far the hardest, as every Octoling had a splat bomb and a special at their disposal. It was the largest one, and they worked in groups to take me down rather than individually coming up and attacking me. But I had one last trick up my sleeve. There were a bunch of canned special weapons just laying around the map that I could pick up, and this allowed me to just tear through their assault. No matter what they tried, they were unable to stop my vengeance. And at long last, after all the Octolings had been dealt with, I was able to go through a launch pad and reach the end of the level. So finally, after about an hour and a half, I had finished after Alterna. And I actually enjoyed it quite a bit, as it felt fun to have the challenge of relearning the game again. If you want to try this out for yourself, I'll leave a link to a control randomizer that I found online in the description. But wait, there's still one thing left to do. Throughout the level, I took quite a few screenshots, 65 to be exact, and what better thing to do with them than show off the best ones. Number 3. Number 3 is a photo that looks like Small Fry coming down to attack me. The context around this photo is why I like it so much. This was right after I restarted around halfway through the challenge, and so I think Small Fry was getting sick of me and how bad I was doing. So after I accidentally threw him, he had enough and decided to enact revenge. Number 2. In number 2 is a photo of a stretched Octogunner. I like this one a lot because of how messed up the proportions are. Like, it really just looks like you put it in Photoshop and elongated it. The other one also looks quite concerned with the state the first one is in, which I find funny. Number 1. And finally, number 1 is a photo of me drowning. Now, the reason I put this in first place is because of the timing it was taken in, as it happened at one of my lowest points in the challenge. Falling off this platform was so embarrassing because I don't think I've ever dived here before, and so screenshotting here just felt like adding salt to the wound. It also doesn't help that it looks like Small Fry is pointing at me and laughing. I'm definitely not taking him to Wahoo World after this. Well, that's all I have for today. Like and subscribe if you think the final boss to Splatoon Raiders should be Inner Agent Big Man, and goodbye.